Stewart Rhodes, founder of Oath Keepers. Briefly, again, for those that just joined us, break down what Oath Keepers is and why it's needed. And from a constitutional law perspective, working in Congress as well for Ron Paul. For those that don't know history, for those that don't have a Yale law degree, they're just like sitting ducks for this. We have scientifically focused, crafted, premeditated usurpation, takeover of our liberties. We are being usurped. We are being trampled. What made America so great is burning to the ground right now. And those of us rushing in with the remedy that the founders gave us, that history gave us, we're being renounced as the enemy because we're the people that have the crosses and the spikes and the garlic and the holy water and the sunshine, and the vampire parasites, they don't like it.
That's right. And they want our military and police to be their willing tools of oppression. But if we can wake them up to the truth, one drop of truth is an antidote to an entire bucket full of nonsense and lies. And so if we can tell them the truth, they have the honor and the courage already, we get them to stand down, just as the Eastern military did in 1989. You had mass protest, and the Communist Party finally gave the order to suppress the mass protest, and the military stood down and refused.
But that was wrong. Government's always good. You never stand up against government. That's un-American. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Right, and you should always obey your commander-in-chief, as we're being told right now. But we should follow the example of the East Germans.
No, we should follow. The commander said the UN ordered him to launch that war. Doesn't matter if I've had Ron Paul and others on to break down that it was illegal and was treasonous. We follow the UN's orders now.
That's what they're trying to tell us.
The president is God. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, that's what they're conditioning the military to believe also. I mean, he should be impeached for what he just did. He went to the UN and acted as though he's the president of the world and the United Nations is Congress. Totally ignored the fact we have a national Congress. And that's the trend. Get away from state power, then get away from our national sovereignty also, and go to international organizations. But if the military and police are educated about the constitutional design that we're supposed to be using, they can and will stand down when a certain tipping point is reached.
All right, I want you to go over that. I'm going to give you the floor for the next 8 minutes till this segment's over, but that's key what you just explained. First, they take it from the counties and the states. Then they take it to the federal government. Then they take it away from the Congress that are the guys that pass the laws, issue the money. In fact, reading the Founding Fathers, co-equal was a minority view of the House and the Senate being in the legislative, and then you have the judicial, the courts, and the executive, the president. The majority, and I've read these rulings and statements on air, was the Congress, because it was the greatest grouping of the people's representatives and had the greatest separation of powers. It had the most power, but now it's being rendered ceremonial. So take it from the state to the federal, take it from the Congress, give it to the president, who then says, I did this to empower the UN. You know, they said that 2 weeks ago, that he did this for the credibility of the UN. So it's already happened. And now, if you don't bow down to the UN, you're a traitor.
That's right. And the most important separation of power is between the sovereign states and the national government. They're both dual sovereignties, part of a dual sovereignty system, and the great majority of the power, as the 10th Amendment makes clear, anything not granted to the national government is reserved to the states or the people. And so they've torn that down, and they brought all power to Washington, D.C., and claim a power to make any rules about anything whatsoever. And then, as you said a minute ago, they take power from Congress and then gravitate it toward the executive branch. Now, he makes rules. You know, stroke of the pen, law of the land, kind of cool. You know, done by Bush as well. Make executive orders, circumventing Congress. And Congress, as you said a minute ago, has, you look at Article 1, Section 8, it is Congress that has the power to coin money. Congress has the power to make rules for governing the military and capture.
To declare war. It's not the president.
That's right, and declare war and to call for...
They order him as the commander-in-chief, the head general, to go do their orders.
That's right. They decide what to do. They make a decision to go to war.
Can't the military get that chain of command? I mean, it's clear. The president is not the dictator. The Congress tells him what to do. Our founders would never give a dictator that power.
Well, Congress abdicated its responsibility. From the War Powers Act on through the authorization of military force for Bush, they have abdicated and given to the president the authority to make war and make those decisions on his own. So it's partly Congress's fault. But the presidents love it. They say, sure, give me all the power. I'll decide. But now, as we said a minute ago, then what happens is they step outside of our Constitution completely. It's not just within the battle between the different parts of our government. It's now we're going to go to the world government, and we're going to have them decide whether we go and fight and die on foreign soil. So now it's the Congress of the world as the national security apparatus of the UN. They decide when Americans fight and die.
Your message to the military and police, they've got a choice to make right now. I mean, we're deep into tyranny already. They're openly calling for internet kill switches, shutting down alternative media. I mean, stuff that we never would have believed would happen is now happening. What's your message to the military and police?
My message to them is do at least as well as the military of East Germany did when they stood down and refused to fire on their own people. Do at least as well as the military of Romania in 1989 when they also refused the dictator's orders to shoot their own people. And 10 days after the uprising began, the dictator was dead. And do at least as good as the military of Tunisia, which just recently also refused orders to fire on their own people. Our men and women in uniform should be able to do as well as the troops of a dictator in a third world North African dictatorship. I believe they can. Some folks are so cynical, they think that they will just do anything they're told. The power elites want you to think that, and they want you to think they all belong to them. Don't forsake them. Wake them up, get them on our side, and they'll do what's right too.
Well, I mean, the bigger issue here is the globalists are the ones that have destroyed our economy. You were saying during the break, Alex, the key is this economic implosion, and you're right.
Sure, they're setting us up like dominoes. They've gutted our power in our states. They made us weak as a people. Like I said last time I was on your show, it used to be we had 3 years of grain reserves in this nation during the Cold War. Now we only have enough for half a loaf of bread for each one of us. It's absurd. So they've intentionally weakened the people and put us up and set us up to be desperate and destitute and starving when the economy collapses.
And by the way, they write white papers on that. That's not, none of this is our opinion. I mean, they want us domesticated.
Sure, and they already tell us.
Is a sharecropper allowed to have any food? No. A sharecropper's got to buy his food from the company store.
And no weapons. You can't organize by yourself. Don't you dare have a posse for your sheriff to back him up. Don't you dare have a state militia. Don't have a county militia. You can't do anything. Like you said earlier, you can't even pack your own kid's lunch. They're treating us like children, and the only safe thing they want us to do is go vote for fake puppet 1 or fake puppet 2, which they both control.
Now, the good news is you are seeing a lot of military and police waking up when we got those secret documents and others have been released that the #1 target of the government secretly is veterans. And that's not some veteran who's whacked out of his mind. It's conservatives and libertarians. That Homeland Security was built for the gun-owning, land-owning American.
And most veterans are traditional Americans. They believe in our heritage, they believe in the principles of the Declaration of Independence, and they believe in the Constitution.
And they may have been conned a little bit to get into neoconism, but they were only used. The globalists hate you. Just like Hitler shut down the SA after he came to power.
That's right. They'll use you and throw you away. And that's why when I reach out to veterans now, they are open and listening because they are being deprogrammed after years under the Bush administration of being brainwashed to go along with the neocon agenda. But now they're waking up. They're seeing, like they're upset about Libya. They understand what's wrong with that. And they're seeing that Obama is he's simply taking what Bush created and taking it to the next step, claiming the authority to assassinate Americans anywhere found in the world on his secret list.
And they admit Al-Qaeda is the core of the rebels. I mean, what do you make of that? The fact that they're telling us Al-Qaeda are now the good guys in Libya.
I hadn't heard much about that.
Pull up Wall Street Journal, yeah. Did you hear about Anwar al-Awlaki, the #2 in Al-Qaeda, hanging out secretly at the Pentagon, Stewart?
Yeah, I did hear about that.
Yeah, I want to get your take on that when we come back after the news. And we've got one of your compadres in studio with us. CNBC on Friday had the headline, Republicans will be to blame if U.S. defaults. Geithner, that's the Treasury Secretary. I had Lou Dobbs on for more than a half hour, and he agreed with me that that was financial terrorism. It is the out-of-control spending. It is the tens of trillions in foreign banker bailouts that is the main reason the dollar is already basically defaulting. The Federal Reserve is having to monetize 70% of it. And China is dumping more and more dollars now. So that is a default. Oh, they're going to pay off the international debts, but with devalued money. And that is a inflation tax on us all. And that leads us to this next segment. I'm going to be doing an extended video interview with both of you guys after this for prisonplanet.tv viewers. But Brandon Smith with alt-market.com. To segue into this briefly, we had Bernard von Nuthaus, 13 years. For decades before that, ran the Hawaiian Royal Mint. You're a constitutional lawyer. Even the Wall Street Journal, Associated Press said he shouldn't have been convicted. The jury's ignorance Last night, I took my kids to a movie. Guy was paying with a $2 bill. Called the manager up, freaked out, almost called cops. People are routinely arrested for $2 bills. But I actually saw this with the guy in front of me last night. It took him like 5 minutes. I mean, and they said, please go to another line. And I was like, well, there's no reason to. I want to see this happen. But he went to jail, basically, or was about to go to jail for a $2 bill. But he didn't even have a $2 bill that was the government currency. He had his own silver. So segue with that, and then let's break down what's happening with the financials.
What they're trying to do is criminalize something the Constitution never said people can't do, which is simply to have real gold and silver in your pocket and use that. So trying to manipulate what vague statutes in our law that have been sitting there for decades, but now they're trying to turn them into a weapon against someone like von Nothaus, who simply had sound money that he was selling and using and encouraging others to use. And so what they've done, like the U.S. Attorney Ann Tompkins said after his conviction, attempts to undermine the legitimate currency of this country are simply a unique form of domestic terrorism. While these forms of anti-government activities do not involve violence, they are every bit as insidious and represent a clear and present danger to the economic stability of this country. And they're telling us what they're going to do. We are determined to meet these threats through infiltration, disruption, and dismantling of organizations which seek to challenge the legitimacy of our democratic form of government.
And we now have 9 states, South Carolina, Montana, others, moving to issue their own currencies. For hundreds of years, there have been cities, counties that issue their own scripts. This is as legal as taking a walk in the park. And they're using the public's abject ignorance and these hand-picked federal juries that are kept basically like criminal informants is what they are. They're just hired liars who would send a ham sandwich to the gas chamber.
That's right. And I lived in Las Vegas. I grew up there. And you saw all kinds of casinos using coins that said U.S., $5, $10. So they use all the same terminology that he was convicted for using. They've been doing that for decades. So what's the difference? Well, he was a legitimate, serious threat to the fiat system. So they don't want anybody to unplug from the matrix to use anything other than their manufactured fiat system. If you use that, they're going to come after you.
He had $7 million on hand when they came and seized it in gold and silver. Now, expanding into ways to counter this, we can't let this intimidation work, or next they'll tell parents they can't pack their kids' school lunches. Oh, I'm sorry, they're already doing that. Or next, they'll have untrained goons sticking their hands down kids' pants. Oops, they're already doing it. Next, they'll be putting sodium fluoride in the water. Oops, they're already doing it. I'm sorry. Brandon Smith, tell us about your idea that's really taking the country by storm, and you guys are traveling around the country getting this information out.
Well, what we're looking at is an extreme form of centralization. And the purpose of centralization is to remove options to the public until there's only one option left. And
that's freedom, though. I mean, like in Star Trek, the Borg are bringing freedom.
Right. Resistance is futile. Yeah.
That's loving, yeah.
And that's essentially what globalization is centralization, removing options until there's only one left.
No more firewalls, nowhere left to run, just nothing but total control freaks running things that openly say they want to exterminate us.
Exactly. And I think the Nothaus decision, the Liberty Dollar decision, was very important. Not necessarily the trial itself, but the post-trial statement from Ann Tompkins, who, compared it to domestic terrorism. I think the reason that's important is because they tipped their hand. They showed that they showed what they fear. What they really fear, which is decentralization and localization and common.
Because if they're going to devalue a currency, which they're now doing, and the Chinese and others don't want it, the Europeans are running away, well, at least they've got us here, and they're saying, look, you're not going to have anything else.
Exactly.
And let's not forget, in my grandparents' day, they ordered them to turn their gold and silver in.
Yes.
And most of them did. My great-grandfather up in Dallas who owned a car dealership, he didn't give in to what they said. I already kept a little bit back, but will Americans line up this time and even turn in their wedding rings if the government orders them to?
We're hoping not. We're hoping that we can influence the public to start taking up personal barter.
But, sir, isn't patriotism doing whatever government says?
That's what they say.
Wow, you're almost as bad as George Washington.
I must be a terrorist like Nothaus for, yeah.
All right, well, tell us about your evil idea of people engaging in commerce outside of the private Federal Reserve notes that are counterfeit, that masquerade as U.S. currency.
Right, well, my extremist idea is to promote barter and trade networks across the country.
Very evil.
that's just the beginning. Eventually, what we want to do is set up conventions across the country that teach people not only how to set up barter networks, but also bring in experts in particular trades.
Like Osama bin Laden?
Somebody like that, yeah. With what is his trade?
CIA officer. But I mean, going back to that, I mean, being serious, I'm just illustrating absurdity by being absurd here.